what we also we have impact assessment activity that are supporting the co-production of the climate services. In fact, within the project, we conduct impact assessments that allow us first to understand the system in which climate services are operating and will operate. And also it allows to evaluate short and long-term impacts of each service, not just on the end user itself, but on the entire community to identify possible positive or negative impacts. So this allows us to detect pitfalls in the entire value chain of the service and suggest improvements of the design of the service, and also help fostering the legacy of the services themselves. Just if you're curious, this is a brief summary of how our methodology, impact assessment methodology works. I'll go very briefly. It's a combination of qualitative and quantitative approaches, which is builds on the Sustainable Development Goals, but it follows also the principles that you see in this colored flower. And for ease of use, we have divided in 4 macro areas of interest that we are looking at. And we have inclusive economic growth, food, water, energy nexus, governance, innovation, partnership, and capacity building, and climate change and disaster risk resilience. And the approach moves in 3 major phases. So we have the first phase on the evaluation of the socioeconomic situation. I was saying before, to understand the system where we are in and where we are operating. And then we'll perform, and we are actually in this phase. Is this first in this first phase, and then there's the next phase on the ex-ante analysis, where we are trying to forecast and anticipate those impacts, and a final ex-post analysis that will measure this impact. This will come throughout the end of the project, but we'll try to leave a tool that will help to evaluate the impacts beyond the lifetime of the project, because we hope that the service that we are creating within the project will be sustainable over time and will be keep used. So you may want to evaluate how they're performing over time. And so I don't want to spend so much time in presenting the methodology, but because I'm really excited to enter into our conversations. So if there's any question on the methodology or the couple of slides that I've just explained, I'm happy to take them. And otherwise, I think we can start with the workshop. And in the next slides, for you to see, I will explain you how it works from now onwards. So if any question now or in the breakout groups. So basically, we have next slide, please. What's happening now? Basically, we are separating now in 3 rooms. We'll have a first, before lunch, we'll have a breakout groups discussion on climate service user requirements and socioeconomic context. We have a lot of topics to discuss, but we are aware that we also have tomorrow. Today, we want to talk about food security. We have seen that so far we are in South Africa, so we put a lot of focus on this case study in the Northwest province, but we are here with a group, very heterogeneous group, and I think this is a great chance to share experiences also from other countries, and it's a precious moment where we all have something to contribute. So thank you for actively participating today. So, as I said, the first session is going to be now until lunch break, and then a second session will come after lunch, and it's on farmer cultivation practices. In practice, what we do. So we have a list of suggested division of the 3 groups. One group will remain here and two groups will go in the two rooms where each moderator will drive you at. So if the moderators could come stand up and show themselves so people know who is. Also for line participants, there's also the possibility through the links to move around the rooms, but the facilities are much better in this room. So we suggest you to remain in the room in this room if you don't know, if you don't have a strong preference. So now Amit is kindly sharing the list of the breakouts. Maybe we can. Is this the online one or the presential one or both? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So online, we are advised to stay here. And then in alphabetical order should be the division by breaker groups. If you have so the first breaker group remains here, is the first column, and Trevor is will stay in this room with you. Breaker group 2 was Dragana, correct? So breaker group 2 will follow Dragana in the corner over there, and she'll guide you to the other room. So please find yourself in the list. And breaker group 3 will follow Sarah standing there. Of course, if there's any reason you want to talk to someone specific, you're free to move around during the activity. So please, I will start asking you to move towards. If you're not in this room, to move towards your moderator, and so that we can start arranging the session. Thank you. The breakout group 2 and 3 are smaller. Where if you see that it's already full, I invite you to stay here. But this for the Focus Africa project partners. the rules.
We start.
Yeah, we're gonna start. Well, we don't need a screen, right? It's more conversation. Let's say if you like coming closer to make the conversation easier. So if you want to sit in the first row.
I think it might help to have the question on the screen, don't you think? Because I can read them out, but then people. Okay, everyone, I think we are ready to start. So this session is allows us to just probe a bit deeper into the whole issue of end user requirements and the socio-economic context. And as Ilaria explained earlier, it's an opportunity for everyone to have a chance to speak and share their views. Many of these questions are tailored to the users of climate services, but obviously there are a lot of Met Service people here, they're academics, intermediaries. So when there's a question that's posed as if it's for a user, everyone is welcome to give their thoughts on that particular question. So we want to hear from both sides of users and providers, etc. So Ilaria is going to bring up the questions, but I'm going to start with the first one. And someone monitoring the online chat?
Yeah, it's coming out in the
Okay.
monitor. We're missing
Hopefully, we'll get all the teething problems sorted out in this breakout group, and then when the next one comes, everyone knows how it works and it'll go much smoother. Okay, so first question. We're interested to know more about your experience in the provision or use of weather/climate services in your area. What information do you use? For what area is it? How is it presented to you? How do you access it? And when is this information produced? So it's all the questions around what, when, how, etc. around your use of climate services, or if you're a provider, share your point of view from a provider's perspective. So I'd like to invite anyone who would like to kick off and share their perspectives.
I'm from the Department of Climate Change and Meteorological Services. So I'm from Malawi, and I'm a service provider. So this service, which I want to talk about, particularly goes to agriculture, that is food security, as well as the energy. And what we normally provide is the season forecast, which is provided to energy as well as agriculture. For agriculture at the beginning of the season for their planning, as well as the energy. And it is also used for making some more contingency planning. Then we also provide some more climate information, particularly like the trends of rainfall, temperature, as well as the some more variability of the same parameters. And for agriculture, what we normally do is there's a program called Participatory Integrated Climate Services for Agriculture, PICSA in short. And in this program, what we do is we generate climate products, which we take to our agriculture colleagues, particularly the extension workers. Then we train them how to interpret the information and how they can make use of it with regards to climate or rather agricultural activities that they undertake. Then this information now is taken further down to the community by the extension workers. So where they have a challenge, they communicate to us so that we can go and support them. While for our colleagues in the energy, what we normally do is we just provide direction in terms of how they can utilize the information that we are providing when they are making plans of how they are going to input our information into their activity within the forthcoming season. And the products that the energy mostly are interested in are 10D, or rather decades, decadal rainfall amounts, as well as the mean temperature within the decade. And they're also interested with strength of the wind over their water dams, because at times when the winds are quite strong and they're coming from a direction where their intake is, the flow is reduced, and that affects their production. That's what I can say at this time. Thank you.
It's interesting. I've never heard that last one about the intake and the water being, the flow being reduced by the wind. It's a very interesting example.
My name is Margaret. I'm sorry. My name is Margaret Mzirai from Tanzania. I'm working under the Tanzania Agricultural Research Institute as the agricultural officer. And the climate services used by our institute are rainfall, temperature, humidity, and we are using these different parameters for different purposes. For example, for rainfall, we are using this rainfall parameter for planning our agricultural research activities. For example, starting from the land preparation, when are we going to prepare our land, and the planting up to data collection. And for rainfall, we also use this data for zonification of crops. Our institute has a total of 17 research centers located in different zones. So, and each zone has different characteristics. So we are using these temperatures for zonification of crops. And also we are using the humidity parameters for prediction of pests and diseases for management purposes. And these centers, all these 17 centers, has the climate center, the weather climate center. So we get this information from these centers. That's in short. Thank you. For projections. Yes, seasonal. It is normally seasonal.
So can I ask also, do you find then that you mentioned humidity and diseases, is that plant diseases, animal diseases?
It's plant diseases, because our institutes are for the plants.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's obviously one of the key predictors then for plant diseases.
What?
So humidity is one of your key indicators then for plant diseases.
Plant diseases. For example, our institute is mandated on for the sugarcane crop. So the disease that we are facing a challenge is the yellow sugarcane aphids.
Okay, thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Mrs. Fatima Sicho and Bunbun from Mauritius. I will share the experience we've gathered over there. We, along with the meteorological station of Mauritius, we do have installation of automatic weather stations on around seven places where we usually collect data, and we can use this data to calculate the amount of water needed for irrigation of our cultivation. And under the new particular project, namely DESIRA, Development of Smart Innovation Research Initiatives, we have recently purchased 10 new automatic weather stations where we will upgrade our system to disease forecasting and even SMS alerts, whereby the farming community will be able to know which period they will be having heavy rainfalls or flash floods, because climate seasons have totally changed in our island, because normally in January, February, March, we do have a very heavy rainfall, whereby we request farming community not to grow crops as such. And we are planning to work on the new automatic weather stations to serve for the good purpose for the farming community. Thank you.
Obviously, everything that Michael shared earlier on what the South African Weather Service produces is obviously also relevant to this conversation. So we note that and bear that in mind in this session too. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ahmed from Comoros. I am the director of Department of Meteorology. So I'm going to speak French, and my colleague she can translate, because my English it's not very very good to interpret, if you accept.
Please go ahead.
It's okay?
Please go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Je vais montrer ce que nous faisons à la Direction nationale de la météorologie, qui est l'Agence nationale de l'aviation civile et de la météorologie en Union des Comores. C'est une direction qui est composée de 4 services. Un service agrométéorologique, un service de prévision météorologique et un service de changement de la climatologie, qui est chargé aussi des observations météorologiques, et aussi un service hydrométéorologique.
Sorry in advance for my vocabulary. So my colleague is part of the direction of the national national weather organization, if I may say, in the Comoros, which is specialized in forecasts, climate changes, observations as well, and hydro weather. Thank you.
OK. Nous, notre expérience sur le changement climatique, c'est que nous utilisons les données collectées à partir des stations automatiques météorologiques, climatiques. On réalise les bulletins agrométéorologiques décadaires. On donne des informations au niveau des CRDE, c'est-à-dire des centres économiques développés pour l'agriculture, des centres ruraux. On donne les informations agrométéorologiques auxquels les agriculteurs en ont besoin. Du côté climat, on réalise aussi les bulletins mensuels climatiques, et aussi les bulletins annuels sur le climat à partir des données à partir des données issues des stations automatiques que nous possédons.
If I have everything, so they have experience in, well, they use data that they gathered from the climate stations. They also give information about agrometeorology, if we can say that, for the farmers' use. And they also gather information for their monthly and yearly climate information paper.
À part les prévisions journalières que nous fournissons quotidiennement, qui est issu du service des prévisions météorologiques, notre expérience, on se base beaucoup plus actuellement dans le cadre d'un projet qui s'appelle JCF, Fonds vert pour le climat. Nous avons bénéficié des stations, plusieurs stations auxquelles nous allons pouvoir couvrir presque 50% de la surface totale de l'archipel. Et les données que nous allons collecter, ce sont des données qui vont appuyer les agriculteurs afin de développer, de donner des informations relatives au climat à partir des agriculteurs.
They also collect daily forecasts as well, and they are part of a project at GCF, right, for climate, with many stations that cover 50% of the Comoros to support farmers and to give climate information.
Et pour finir, nous utilisons des outils, nouvelles technologies comme des logiciels comme software et d'autres logiciels des smartphones afin de collecter les informations. C'est juste l'ensemble c'est de cette manière que nous travaillons au sein de notre service. Bon, je pense que c'est...
About their tools, they use new technologies a lot to gather information, to collect, information to give it to farmers through softwares and also smartphones.
En termes d'expertise, nous avons des ingénieurs en météorologie, nous avons des ingénieurs en agrométéorologie et nous avons aussi des environnementalistes. Voilà. Des ingénieurs en agrométéorologie.
And they also work a lot. Well, they have inside their organization a lot of engineers in agrometeorology as well. I think we have to stop, right?
Just a minute. Donc, nous fournissons notre service et le service qui fournit, qui donne presque toutes les informations relatives à la météorologie au niveau national dans tous les départements qui se trouvent, que ce soit au niveau des bâtiments, au niveau des travaux publics, au niveau de la santé. Donc, c'est la direction qui fournit toutes les données liées au climat et à l'environnement au niveau national.
Sorry. this organization give actually all the data, all the information for the meteorology, for health, environment, and also the building sector. I don't know if it's the correct word, but cover a lot of sectors to give the climate data.
Thanks very much. I think in the interests of time, we're going to move on to the next question. So the next question is, how about traditional local knowledge on weather and climate? Does anyone want to share any example? And how do you combine this knowledge with scientific information, if appropriate?
It's whether we can, whether we can modeling combined with the local knowledge, or whether you separate, sometimes in farming practices, you cannot rely on climate model, but you just rely on what you've seen in the 5 past years, or from the knowledge of the people in the ground, and from the certain science at the beginning of the year, maybe some information. So we will wonder how much of this practice local knowledge is mixed with can be mixed with climate services, or if you think it's in there's a clash or anything happening.
Lebo, did you want to respond? Do you use indigenous knowledge in your farming?
Thank you. I'm Lebo Mabe from Dr. Ruth in the Northwest. Of lately, we used, not that because we are not getting much of the information from the climatic information that we are getting, we're not correct. We went to regenerative farming method. So in the regenerative farming method, it's not tilling system. You don't use much of the fertilizers, but you use the chicken mess and whatever to reproduce in your land. And the other thing, what you do in the regenerative, what you do, the mixed crop type of a thing where you plant sunflower and you also plant feed for livestock. So that helps that you don't lose a lot of water. So in our area, we've got very little water that we get. So in November, you can plan that you are going to plant sunflower, but you first plant these cash crops so that they can hold much of the water and the moisture underground, and then you plant sunflower later on. We were very skeptical in terms of what crops do you choose in between, because of it creates much of a problem of cash crops and your feed that you're doing for livestock. They end up fighting for water of what you get underground. But in actual fact, it's assisting when you take like your there's another plant called the Brazilian that when it's getting ready, it keeps the water. You plant grass in between, and for the fact that you did not reap, when you reap, you stabilize, you disturb the natural ground. So what you do is that every little water that you get, you put in rain gauge in between your fields, and you calculate how much water you get per plant on what is there. And what you do is, because of its not tilling system, is that immediately after harvesting, you're putting it livestock, and you don't plow it. You just clean the fields and plant another different crop. If you had like maize or sunflower, the next season you plant groundnuts or you plant soya on it, because of this. So, and it actually helps because of it reduces much in terms of your cost of your input cost. You don't spend a lot in diesel, because of if you reap, you spend a lot of money in diesel. You don't spend a lot of money in trying to control on chemicals and fertilizers and so. Thank you. And the last point of what I wanted to add on is that, and if you do the soil testing the next season, you see a lot of improvement in your soil testing and your land does not get to be much more exposed to the sun because of in our area is very hot. So if you look at it, it looks very dirty. I hope I had pictures here just to show to you. But what you happening is that you get a better output. And now because particularly myself that I'm more of a livestock farmer than a crop farmer, but we use croplands to give our livestock camps a resting. So we need to push a lot of stock to deal with during the dry seasons. Like now, as we are busy harvesting, much of all the livestock, all the lands that are finished, you put in livestock on it. Thank you.
I can just ask, at the beginning you said you don't really use weather information because you find it's not accurate. Would you like to tell us which information you've tried and why it didn't work?
I think I think as farmers we were using more of the information that we got from our great grandparents to say that our rainy season will start from this period to this whatever period. And because of we had this massive drought, and the drought hit us so hard because of we kept on getting the information from the climate to say no, it was drought for the past 2 years. Now this year is gonna be fine. We are expecting now December, and we rushed and we even took the risk that we planted even if when it was still dry because of we expected that we get rain, and it hit us so hard. And now since from last a year before last year, and then we start having this massive rains. But surprisingly, we got that massive rain in January. And in normal instances, we don't get that much rain during the period of in January. You get more rain in November and December, but you got more rain in December, which automatically it was totally out of the graph how it showed. And when we took the risk and planted crops in January, and remember, when we get winter, our winter is too hard. So we must start harvesting around end of May, June, around there. So because it was something that was totally different. And in the previous season, last year, in the beginning of this year, we had a lot of rains, which resulted in our input being having too much of in terms of grading of our grains is very poor, but we've got high output. So we are much now producing for feed more than for food consumption or other market. And which is it's not a market that we are used to, or it's a market that we are always using. Now you have to deal with high transportation cost, looking for other markets that we don't show off that are not even stable in terms of pricing. Thank you.
Was it a forecast from?
Yeah, it was a forecast. What normally happens is that in the farmers groups and communications that we normally get, they normally maybe tell us, because remember, for the particular crop that you plant, it will go with the seed that you use. So if you go like for Hana seed, there's a seed that you can plant in January, but there's a seed that you can plant in December. So we use that information in terms of which seed are you going to log. Yes, the cooperatives and the farmers union normally share the information.
Just asking in which form do they share it? Do they email you? Do they call you? Like, how do you receive normally this information?
I think because we've got a very poor signal network in our area, we normally get from WhatsApp groups. It moves
Okay.
faster within WhatsApp groups. And you also normally rely on the extension officers. The extension officers, they go around in our farms and then they share information with us.
Okay, thanks. This is helpful for us because we understand. So, like, if we make a service and then if we make a nice tool which needs a lot of internet, a very good internet connection, that may not be useful in such a case, for example, where it's more useful to have something which is easier to share through WhatsApp, for instance.
I feel like at this point I need to give the online participants a chance to speak. Is there anyone online who would like to respond to this question? Okay, if you would like to just put your hand up or type in the chat box and we'll give you an opportunity. Michael?
Thanks, Chair. I think the question is about indigenous knowledge systems and in relation to the climate services. So from the South African Weather Service side, we strongly believe in the co-production because as a climate service providers, you need to engage more with the users. And as part of that, we have started and currently implementing a number of projects where we look at indigenous knowledge systems and citizen science approach also, where we involve the users from the initiation of the projects on how to monitor data collection and incorporate also the indigenous knowledge, because we provide seasonal outlooks. For example, the seasonal outlook that we provide is it gets updated monthly. We provide rainfall predictions for the coming season and minimum and maximum temperatures. But then how about the farmers? They've been using for generations, the indigenous knowledge. So we try to complement also what they have and what are the synergies and what is the gap. So some of the projects we are currently implementing to look at the indigenous knowledge systems. And as part of the national framework for climate services, also we get involved also on the IKS or indigenous knowledge systems. So yeah, it's a very important issue that we need to address when as a climate service providers. Thank you.
That would kind of lead into the next question of do you have any examples of how that indigenous knowledge is applied in decision making? I don't know if you would like to respond, Michael. Or...
Okay, I can start. We had a project, for example, where in Limpopo, we work with Limpopo Department of Agriculture, and we train the extension officers. At the department, we get involved also on training some of the farmers. And as part of that, we also gather information, what indigenous knowledge systems, what do they use, what farming practices. I think some of the farming practices, I think, has been raised by the previous presenter. And so those indigenous knowledge systems, like for example, what do they use? Do they look at trees, sprouting trees, leaves, or birds, or animals? They've got different ways of addressing it. And then we ask them, how do they then use our forecast, or do they strictly use indigenous knowledge and leave the seasonal out forecast, or do they use whatever information they get from the extension officers? And sometimes, because the seasonal outlooks, they've got uncertainties also. They depend on a lot of probabilities.
So the current projects that we get in, there is no absolute answer on what to use, but I think the best way in the forward is, I think, to use both, and where there is synergies, to use both indigenous knowledge and then supplement it with the seasonal outlook product. And then where there is a gap, also we're trying to identify the gaps and then what are the differences. So I think that's how we are implementing it on project basis approach for different sites. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to give an example of how we integrate indigenous knowledge into our season forecasting. What normally happens is that during the time we are disseminating the season forecast to the community, in most cases, what we do is when we meet the community, we tell them to give us, based on their indigenous knowledge, what they are anticipating that particular season. And based on what they have given us, how are they going to plan in terms of what are they going to do based on the forecast that they have given us. Then after they have given us, that's when now we present our season forecast. And after we have presented, we ask them to identify where they are seeing their gaps or where they are converging, so that maybe where they have gaps, they can understand from, from the scientific point of view, why there are gaps, or maybe on our side, we can also identify what is it that is making that particular gap. Thank you.
I will like just to add that some growers in Mauritius they carry out the system of mulching. At the same time, the soil moisture is being kept at a particular level, and also lesser evaporation, and hence the crops don't need that amount of water. And also growers over there do not grow the same crops at one go. They try to, not one family, because it will cause the incidence of diseases. So they try to rotate, as we do crop rotation. And at the same time, we can get different incomes from different crops. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Charles Sewole from Lesotho Meteorological Services. We are a service provider. Basically, during the PIXA process, that's where we try to capacitate extension officers. They always tell us that, when we carry this information to farmers, one thing that they do, they'll tell you, we have already started, planning. Even without having to disseminate this information, we already have our plans based on the experience and the indigenous knowledge. So in that way, that information complements well with what they already have gathered from the farmers. So in that way, you rather have them say what they think about the oncoming season before you even disseminate the weather and climate information, seasonal forecast, for example, to them. That's the experience we have with Lesotho.
It's almost like the indigenous knowledge is one step ahead of the forecasts. Is it?
Sorry, I think Trevor was asking.
Beg your pardon?
Sorry, what I was saying is it's almost like the indigenous knowledge is one step ahead of the forecasts.
Yes, because of the experience, especially in the highlands where, they will not rather wait for the rains because the planting season is just too short. So already have plans even way ahead of us informing them about the oncoming season.
I think we'll probably need to move on to the next question.
Yeah. Yeah, if you prefer to go to the third one or to start with the gaps?
I think we've kind of already covered the third one.
Yeah, somehow.
So
you can start looking at the gaps. Sorry, apologize.
Okay, so the next question is, what difficulties do you face in accessing and using climate information? And for providers, what challenges do you face about timing?
Well, challenges in general, and also, for example, the timing. I mean, sometimes when you get the forecast may not be the right, although it's maybe relevant, is not the right timing, for instance, but this is just one example of barriers. But in general, yes, what are the challenges on one side, on the user side, to access this information when they want to, could be related to timing or to any other barrier or to technology. And for the provider, also what are if there are some challenges in the sharing of this information or reaching the end user of the information, this and a bit on this line.
Afraid we've been given 1 minute to finish, so we've probably got time for one person to talk about challenges in accessing the information.
Thank you for the opportunity. The biggest challenge that as a service provider that we face is in terms of reaching the intended target. Most time when the forecasts are generated, in order for you to take them to the local community, it becomes a challenge because the country is vast and probably in terms of human capital at an institution is also very minimal. So this is the biggest challenge. And communicating to them using, say, mobile and the other means becomes also a challenge due to maybe some financial constraints. So we rely on the extension services from agriculture, who does not also go to meet each and every community. At times, they only meet maybe some farm clubs who doesn't share the information. And on the side of the users, the biggest challenge that they face is getting information and also interpreting or rather understanding this information the way they want it. Because users mostly would require information that would give them a more detailed of how events would take place so that they can plan. But the information that med services generally provide, in most cases, you find that it's more crude, probably probabilistic, and at times even at monthly basis, but it doesn't cover the whole area that a farmer is interested in. So this is also a challenge. Thank you. Well, I'll talk on this, I mean, on the basis of Malawi, not the other countries. Yes, in our case, as I've already explained earlier on, that we train the extension workers first before they get the information to the end user. So they have an advantage. In fact, previously, they used it to side with farmers, accusing us that we are not providing the right service to the farmer. But now, extension workers in Malawi, mostly they are on our side because they're able to understand what we're providing, and they are also able to advise farmers and give them the appropriate information that they require.
We do have to stop there.